country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. And then there's abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up.
So here's how it all began. Bill Maher opened the discussion the way only he can, by asking the tough questions others avoid. This time, his focus was on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her constant push for a far-left agenda. The truth is, everyday Americans are rejecting it more and more. Maher asked the obvious question: why keep pushing a political philosophy that many people now see as divisive, toxic, and out of touch with reality? Most people would step back, rethink their approach, maybe even make some changes. But not AOC. She believes she's on the moral high ground and insists on forcing her vision onto the country, whether people want it or not. But Maher wasn't just criticizing. What came next was sharp, calculated, and delivered like a complete takedown. A demolition with words, leaving no room for political excuses or quick TikTok spin. And trust me, you'll want to hear every second of it, because this is where things turn brutal. ...
Every month I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
This right here has become the hill Democrats are choosing to die on. The inability to define what a woman is. Just 10 years ago, this wasn't even up for debate. Everyone understood that a woman is someone who menstruates, can become pregnant, and give birth. That was biology, plain and simple, not ideology. Then came the progressive rebrand. Suddenly, gender was fluid. Men could identify as women, and anyone who disagreed was instantly labeled a bigot. But Americans didn't go along quietly. They asked honest questions and were met with lectures, cancellations, and smug dismissals from elite voices in blue states. While the left doubled down on redefining terms, the rest of the country quietly walked away. The result? One of the most crushing electoral defeats the Democratic Party has seen in recent years. Not because voters were hateful, but because they were tired of being told that reality itself was offensive. Democrats didn't just lose votes. They lost trust where things turn brutal.
And then there's abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
And this is exactly what happens when you keep pushing people into a corner. At some point, they push back, and often in ways you didn't expect. AOC and her allies strutted around deep blue states as if they held a blank political check. Untouchable, unquestionable, unstoppable. They thought they could push through any policy, no matter how extreme, and that their supporters would blindly follow. But they misjudged badly. What they didn't see was the quiet rebellion taking shape. Voters who once stood firmly behind them started flipping quickly, almost overnight. And where did those voters go? Straight to the Republicans, the same group AOC had spent years demonizing. This wasn't some slow trickle. It was a massive shift, shaking what were once considered safe Democratic strongholds. Now the question is clear. Is this just a temporary setback for AOC, or is it the beginning of a political earthquake that could undo everything she's built? Stick around, because Maher's next words might
And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
Now, if you've been wondering why Maher keeps saying my lawyer and their lawyer, don't get confused. It's not about court. It's political theater. What he's really saying is this. Voters expect their elected officials to act as their advocates, their defenders. In other words, our lawyer, not the opposition's lawyer. But here's the problem. AOC and her progressive allies haven't been fighting for the people. Instead, they've been fighting against them, lecturing, posturing, and pushing policies that leave voters wondering, whose side are you really on? Maher laid it out like a courtroom case. Point by point, jab by jab, he exposed the growing gap between what voters want and what these so-called representatives are actually doing. The irony? AOC talks like she's defending the underdog, but in the court of public opinion, she's starting to look more like the one on trial. And when Maher delivers his final argument, it won't be pretty.
An 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
And it wasn't just Latino voters that AOC and her progressive allies managed to alienate. They also damaged something far more important, our education system. And the results are showing. A few years ago, backed by the Biden administration and cheered on by the far left, new policies made it harder to remove underperforming teachers. Sounds nice in theory, but in practice, it tied the hands of school administrators nationwide. The outcome? Students suffered. According to the nation's report card, the average math scores for 13-year-olds fell by 9 points between 2020 and 2023, the largest drop in 50 years. Reading scores fell by 4 points. And yet, many of the teachers responsible are still protected like national treasures. So while AOC rallies crowds with speeches and Bernie Sanders repeats his same class war rhetoric, parents are left staring at their children's failing report cards. This isn't just a mistake. It's a generational crisis. Which raises the question, with results like this,
A parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher? Yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
sometimes, when you really look back at some of the Democrats' failed policies, it's hard not to laugh. And these aren't small stumbles. We're talking about major disasters. Take the defund the police push. That collapsed fast once crime started spiking in major cities. Even many who supported it at first quietly backpedaled. Or the cancel rent movement, which sounded great in a college dorm room, but fell apart against the realities of economics. And let's not forget the idea of eliminating standardized testing, because apparently expecting accountability is now considered oppressive. As Maher put it, it's like Democrats are playing a game called How to Lose the Middle in 10 Easy Steps, and they're winning by losing. And here's the kicker. Despite all these failures, they still believe they deserve another chance to run the country. This is political theater you couldn't make up if you tried, and Maher isn't letting them off the hook.
President Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer. A universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only a few identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person?
Maher then made a sharp point that deserves attention. If Democrats truly want to return to power, they have to do more than post slogans on Twitter or ride around on a moral high horse. They need to confront their mistakes honestly. And here's the radical part. They actually need to talk to the people they've ignored. Not talk at them. Not guess their needs from an air-conditioned office in Washington. But sit down face to face, listen without judgment, and hear real concerns. Relying on polls and think tank theories is exactly how they lost touch in the first place. Maher isn't saying sell out. He's saying reconnect, rebuild trust, and stop preaching only to their echo chamber. Because the very voters they need the most, they've already walked away. The question is, will Democrats wise up before it's too late?
When he ran in 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities, so it seems fair that they jump the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience. But to do that, I'm going to need a good lawyer who fights for me.
At the end of it all, Maher didn't just criticize Democrats. He held up a mirror. From ignoring voters to rewriting basic truths, the party has drifted so far from reality that many Americans barely recognize it anymore. Yes, Maher delivers it with humor, but behind the punchlines are gut-level truths about failures in policy, communication, and common sense. If Democrats want a shot at redemption, It won't come from doubling down on bad ideas. It will come from listening, adjusting, and reconnecting with the people they claim to represent. If they don't, voters won't just walk away. They'll slam the door shut behind them. And that brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.